And we are the Coalition, loud and proud, outrage porn-free, civilly disobedient media, broadcasting live here on the Worldwide Coalition Radio Network at the Go Local Live Broadcast Center deep in the heart of the city we love, Providence, Rhode Island. The Naked City, what is it? There's 9 million stories in the Naked City, I was corrected. We're going to tell you a few of them tonight. Facebook.com/The Coalition Radio, on the mighty Twitter at Coalition_radio. And of course, the mothership at coalitionradio.us. And so after our brief hiatus, we resume and we start our spring into summer season here at the Go Local Live Broadcast Center. A big shout out to Josh Fenton and the entire crew here who continue to make this a warm, cozy place, if you will, right in the heart of the city to send out our message. And our message this season will continue to be challenging. We'll handle all the third rail issues. Tonight, we just touch on a couple of really dynamic ones. Joining me in just a few minutes will be Felipe Martinez. He of the Boston Independent Drivers Guild will be joining us, representing Uber and Lyft drivers and their quest for fair payment, an even playing field, and at least some sense of stability within their driving world. Full disclosure, I've done over 2,500 Lyft drives myself, so I have a unique sense of where he's coming from. At 7 o'clock, Amy Gardner, longtime correspondent to the Coalition, will show up. This week, Thursday night, legislation in front of your Rhode Island State Senate is pending, which would create what we call the bad database bill. She'll go into more of that, but again, the ultimate question is, to what degree of privacy are you entitled to as a Rhode Islander? What level of control do you exert over your children's medical treatment? And in this case, vaccinations. And what is the role of the state in involving itself in the medical treatment of you and your family? It's ugly. 8 o'clock, the Libertarian Hour. Ben Letter will be joining us. He of the Radical Libertarian Caucus, and he'll be talking about things radical and explaining to us what a radical libertarian means. For most people, being a libertarian is, well, radical enough. So what scary things happen to you when you become a radical libertarian? I don't know. Look what it did to me, because I'm one too. So it is with great pleasure that I invite on the air for the very first time someone who I've been following closely for a few months now in his efforts to organize Lyft and Uber drivers for all of that which I mentioned. His name is Felipe Martinez. A brief note on unions. A lot of my libertarian and right of center friends seem to take a moral offense at unions. Well, if a voluntary association of people in a free market to gain clout, economies of scale, and a better living is as capitalistic as it gets. Now, recent legislation in terms of national labor unions, particularly public labor unions, has crossed that difficult threshold where increasingly, as case law expands, individuals will no longer be forced to join a union. As a libertarian, I don't believe in coercion, whether it comes from the government or a private organization or a quasi-governmental organization. I just don't. But in a case where people gather together to gain strength in the marketplace, I see no difference from that, from banks organizing to control their markets, suppliers of raw materials who often merge, oil companies, copper, steel, and gain the kudos of the marketplace, manufacturers who coalesce around a set of product offerings. Very often the stock market and the marketplace applauds their voluntary cooperation. So I've never been quite sure if it's truly voluntary what people have against labor unions. During the recent Stop and Shop strike, I was astonished to find the level of vitriol to be pre-20th century. Oh my God, those people are going to make this, and this. And so somehow, because they negotiated for it, they weren't entitled for it, that they were in a sense getting some form of welfare. And I would say to a number of those people, sounds like you need a labor union. Again, the important point being, as long as you don't have to join, as long as you don't have to pay dues. But should you gather together voluntarily, God bless. They get pensions. We get 401ks. You tell me who's better off. Only time will tell. So Felipe, first of all, a hearty welcome to the coalition. Thank you for joining us on such short notice. You've got an action coming up in just a little while that's going to involve, hopefully, a coordinated work stoppage by drivers who drive alongside of you. But first, let's get a little bit of background. When did you become a rideshare driver, and what impact has it had on you? Give me the pluses and the minuses, and a little bit about yourself personally.
So my name is Felipe Martinez. I am one of the members of the Boston Independent Drivers Guild. It's an organization founded by drivers for drivers. And how I got involved was through a Facebook group. And it was a bunch of drivers who were very unhappy with the rates and what's going on. So I started roughly about 3 years ago driving. I owned an antique store. I'm a Mass State licensed auctioneer. And times for my business were declining, so I made a choice to close my store. I was doing pretty good with Lyft and Uber, with mainly Uber driving, so I figured I'd take some time out. I'm 49 years old. I have a 2-year-old son and a 4-year-old son, so I figured I'd take some time out, spend some time with them, and drive for Uber when I could. And I started driving full time in April, last April, and I noticed a lot of concerns regarding drivers about non-transparency, about unfair deactivations, and that's when I started to get more involved with other drivers and just get more active and to find a common solution within a bunch of drivers so that we can organize, not like a union, but just have like an association or just a common bond between drivers. And it just started to steamroll with other like-minded individuals. And we have a bunch of great guys that are really motivated, and they're really helping so much. And it's just not me. It's a group, and I think that's the best part is camaraderie of a bunch of drivers who seek a better life and seek to be treated fairly.
Now, why do you think at this point the various rideshare companies, and of course we're talking about Uber and Lyft, there are some smaller regional players out there who are experimenting and dipping their toes into the marketplace. But what started out so well a few years ago for the early adopters, what's happened to the plight of the individual driver, particularly in bigger cities like Boston and New York?
Well, I think what's going on is that the rideshare companies at the beginning never thought it was going to steamroll into something so profitable and so useful. I'm like I said, I'm only 3 years wet in this business. There's other people that have been doing this actually since the beginning, and majority of those guys are called black car drivers. Mm-hmm. Now those guys really got their butts kicked in because they started as a luxury driving software where people were making fantastic money. And when Uber and Lyft saw what was going on, they were like, well, we need to drop it down to the regular people who use taxis, those type of people. And then I think it just switched off. Obviously, capitalism switched off. They wanted to make more money and then switch off and then started to lower the rates as they gain more drivers. And the more assets that they have, many believe that, they go through drivers like crazy.
Right.
So I think it's just the capitalism of everything and just going forward.
So can you give me an idea, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot with statistics, if you will, but what kind of drop in ridership in terms of income for a driver have people seen? I mean, how much harder do you have to work to make the same money that you did just a couple of years ago?
So I would say, me personally, I've seen I've seen my income drop at least 35%.
Wow.
Some people have seen it 50%. It just depends. And with the transparency, for example, with their algorithm, they can factor in people to make a certain amount per hour, no matter what. It's just what they want, the profitability that they need. Because as you know, we're driving online hours, and sometimes we don't have passengers in the vehicle online.
Right.
And sometimes we sit in a location for an hour online, and we don't get a ride. And if it is a ride, sometimes it's a $6 ride. So some of us are sitting around for $6 an hour rides. And in some cases, people feel that that's unfair because there's no transparency with the algorithm and the software in the ridership. And I mean, in my case, it's been about 35% less.
Wow. Now, you talked about arbitrary driver decisions. I'm a member of a variety of Facebook groups that are driver only. I mean, to the point where you actually have to, in order to become accepted into the group, you have to upload documents that only a driver would have. So it's pretty compelling stuff. You don't get what in the driver business we call passengers packs, right? We don't get packs in.
That's right.
We ostensibly probably get some people from Uber or Lyft who are just kind of sneaking in and trying to figure out what to do or what's going on. But the relationship has become strained, if you will, between a sizable amount of the drivers and the motherships, if you will, Uber and Lyft. I mean, significantly strained. And part of that, like you said, is these arbitrary, all of a sudden you're deactivated. So here you are, you've committed to this platform. Things are going wonderfully, if you will. Now, certainly if a criminal background check comes back as problematical, or you've consistently maintained poor ratings, well, they've got a right. And quite frankly, they're a private business. So, let's frame this properly. I'm a libertarian. They can technically do whatever they want. I mean, it's no one's forcing the driver to be part of the platform. But at the same time, in the battle of supply and demand and in the marketplace, they quite frankly need the drivers as much or more than, well, the drivers need them in a world where unemployment is under 4%. So what are some of the causes for some of these arbitrary, one day you're just there and one day you're not? Well,
how I feel it with the unfair, we call it over here unfair deactivations.
Right.
We'll say, for example, in Massachusetts, marijuana is legal. Mm-hmm. So I'll give you a little bit I'll give you a scenario. I'm driving a pool. The first person gets in my vehicle and smells like marijuana. Right. Now, the second person gets in, smells the marijuana, and thinks it's me. Well, now they go and complain after the ride, and once I turn to get another passenger, in some cases people are unfairly deactivated, mm-hmm. where their app is just shut off, and there's no recourse. And what they do is it's very unfair. Is they just shut your account off, so you can't reach out to any of the customers. You can't see what happened. You either have to call Uber or you have to go to the hub, and it's very unfair. Now that happens from time to time. A lot of us in the business, we put like a spray or an Ozium. But in some cases, when that happens, I have to reach out to the packs behind me and make mention and explain to the person on the left-hand side that, by them coming to my vehicle smelling like marijuana, I could get deactivated. Uh-huh. So it puts everybody in a sticky situation. And unfair deactivations happen for many different reasons. Accidents. A passenger may say a driver approached them, said a racial slur, was very unhappy. Another scenario is that in Massachusetts, we're not allowed to pick up people without car seats. Some cases, when you go to an area pick up someone and they have a child with no car seat, we say we can't take them because there's no car seat, and they go and complain and say something like discrimination or racial profiling or something, and it's because we didn't take them with their car seat, and the driver gets deactivated. There is no recourse for the driver's protections.
Yeah, and that's and the tough part, and for everyone who's out there saying, well, tough darts, I mean, you know, they have a right to hire and fire at will. They ask you to make a significant investment in your vehicle. So there is very much a partnership at play. You're asked to provide a vehicle of certain size. It has to pass safety examination, it has to pass their examination. It has to pass, in Boston, in the case of Boston, it has to pass the livery department's, their inspection now. That's a recent update, as well as to pass all criminal background checks, which are less than perfect, let's be blunt. So on top of that, you've got people who can literally just hate bomb a driver for something they said or something they didn't do. And one of the toughest parts, as you pointed out, is if you're doing the right thing and you're turning down rides at the last minute because that person is attempting to put a child, perhaps an unaccompanied minor, or a child who is not of age but requires a car seat and they don't, or if you're driving a pool in Boston where you pick up multiple people and they share the ride effectively, you know, you have people going grocery shopping, saving a few dollars on the pool, but not leaving space for other drivers, and yet at the same time not be willing to pay for an extra seat. So you have all of these folks who know that we live and die by our customer service rating, and as a result, if we have problems with that, real or imagined, we can lose that source of income in a heartbeat after having made a significant investment in a vehicle, whether you rent it through them or whether you pay for it yourself. So it's not a completely arm's length relationship. It's not this whole notion that, you know, you're completely an employee at will. You have to accommodate their needs. Yet at the same time, they have the ultimate power. Now, how tough is it to get a hold of someone at Uber or Lyft? Let's be honest, on the line. How? You know,
Very difficult.
Right. You know, they'll all send you the app. What do they all want you to do? They all want you to send an email, right? So if it's Friday night or Saturday night and you are shut down or you've got an issue, you've got to email them and hope somebody eventually gets back to you. In the meantime, you're out of commission. Now, let's talk about rates and bonuses. First of all, people should know that rates in Rhode Island are vastly different than they are in Boston, which creates a situation in Boston where you have Rhode Island drivers like myself routinely, and I do it a couple nights a week, I do it part-time, but who routinely drive up to, you know, get the hot times, you know, which is Friday and Saturday night. You know, on a Friday or Saturday night, you can go 2 or 3 hours without, you know, literally stopping, without not having a ride. Talk about the physicality of that. How hard is the work itself?
I'm sorry, what was that again? How far is what?
How hard is the actual work? I mean, what's it like?
The work. So it depends. So if you're a full-time driver, everybody has a certain way of driving, I guess, where you live. Mm-hmm. I do not like to drive the weekends because of the fact of the people who drink and they get sick in your vehicle. Everybody has a different way. It's not hard work. It's easy. But we have tools of the trade. Our vehicle is our tools of the trade. So that's when they keep lowering the pay and compromising our tools. And then what they try to do is give us bonuses. So what they do is they put the carrot in front of the horse and they just lead them. And sometimes it doesn't work out. Sometimes it does. You're absolutely right about the Friday and Saturday nights. In some cases, you do not stop for at least 3 hours. It is nonstop. But I personally feel, and a lot of people personally feel, that Uber can make everybody busy. They just choose not to because they want to keep everybody at a certain income level.
Right. Right. No, absolutely. So it's on top of that, you've got, you know, have rates been increasing or decreasing in terms of?
Well, our rates in Boston went to, I believe it was like $1.20 in Boston per mile to roughly 70 cents per mile. And then the other rate was the time actually went up. But for a lot of drivers, it came to like a negative of roughly, I don't know, maybe 16% of a loss as on that aspect of the ratio. And there's a lot of other there's a lot of other issues like the bonuses. Then they add in bonuses. They changed in the surge pricing. They used to give us different surge pricing, and now it got lowered. It's like a dynamic surge. And sometimes you could be in the surge area but not get that surge.
Yeah, people are used to the heat map, and the consumer has this concept that when it's peak time or peak difficulty, that all of a sudden drivers are going to score. And of course, by the way, very often you can have situations where the driving company scores, but how often does that not translate down to the level of the driver?
It doesn't. Go ahead. The rates. Can you repeat that again? I'm so sorry.
Well, in other words, you see these people are familiar with the heat map, as it's called.
Yeah.
And in the heat map, you see all sorts of orange and pinks and purples and blacks and flames and all sorts of stuff. So and then all of a sudden people get these crazy fares quoted to them. The assumption is that the driver is participating in that, but that's not necessarily the case, is it?
No, it's definitely not the case. No, we're not participating in that. That's when they actually, I believe, that was in November. I believe that was in September when they changed the surge pricing, where it would be like you would get $2 in a certain surge per ride instead of getting 2.5 times the fare. And they changed it. We do not receive what we should be getting in those surge areas. That's correct. And in some cases, the surge areas, when other drivers see the surge areas, it's very manipulative. Because sometimes when you get to that surge area, it's gone. There's no surge there.
Right.
And in some cases, your app, that's happened to me. I was on the phone, a lot of times where my app would just, as soon as I got to that surge area, I wouldn't see the surge. I'd be in the pink area. No numbers would come to me. And then I'm calling, and then they say, well, you have to reset your app. You reset the app, and all the surge is gone.
Right. It's magic. It's just absolutely. So what we're trying to paint here, folks, and if you're just joining me, Felipe Martinez is involved with the Boston Independent Drivers Guild, and he's creating or trying with his group to create a working coalition of drivers. He's not calling it a union, but a working coalition of drivers to negotiate for just simply better terms. And the last time I checked, that's about as American as it gets, right? Unless, of course, you just want to sit there and just be a human pincushion and work your butt off and get less. I guess if you're okay with that, I'm okay with that for you too as well. Because we're going to touch in the next half hour about some of the criticisms, actually from some of the drivers, incredibly enough, who criticize the efforts at different cities, that somehow it's more American to be loyal to the company and accept less. Whew, okay.
Exactly.
We'll get our arms around that in a few minutes. Folks, if you're just joining us, Felipe Martinez, as I said, is calling in via the miracle of Skype. We are the Coalition. This hour is sponsored by Air Sciences, airsciences.net. Air Sciences is Rhode Island's leading mold and biohazard remediation firm. Darrell Gould and his hardy crew roam Rhode Island, eastern Connecticut, and up into Massachusetts. Homes, schools, industrial workplaces. Probably some of the drivers' cars that I've seen. They need that sort of deep cleaning that goes beyond a little shine and a little spiff. And a nice appearance. Because quite frankly, at this time of year, and particularly after the spring we've had, mold spores are going to start to abound. And they will impact the health of your family, your students, and or your workers and coworkers. So airsciences.net, Daryl Gould's group is sponsoring this hour. Give him a call. He's got a special programs available for people who have been compromised by autoimmune diseases and folks who are just coming off of chemotherapy. He's got some free programs available to them. So if you fall into that category, reach out to Daryl Gould at airsciences.net. Again, joining me live via the Miracle Skype is Felipe Martinez. He is with the Boston Independent Drivers Guild. So that's the snapshot. You've got a job that's physically demanding. You've got unknown income rates. You're really it's guesswork every night. What you're going to make, how you're going to make it, when you're going to make it, where you're going to make it. You're being rated by every single one of your customers, and that's got the potential to sideline you, potentially permanently, if someone decides that they want to embellish and or sometimes just outwardly create a story, and your appeal of that is based on an email system that is cantankerous at best. You have no idea
Correct.
when or if anyone is going to get back to you. Now, for those people who say it's a free market and you don't have to drive them, okay, that's true. But recognizing that, understand that drivers have to make a significant investment, or asked to, in their vehicle, in their insurance, in their gasoline. They're putting out the implicit promise every night as that you're going to be treated fairly and given an opportunity to make a living. And of course, since this is just post the initial public offering of Lyft, and we're walking into that period of time when Uber is going to go private, the puff pieces and the PR abounds about how much these companies are doing for their drivers. Bullshit. It's oh my. So let's talk about the organization itself. You've got an event coming up very shortly that you're going to ask drivers to participate in, and you're going to ask the public to support. So tell us about that and what's happened in similar events in other cities.
So on Wednesday, May 8th, we're having an action. The action is a protest. We're all meeting at the hub. We're trying to get as many drivers as we can to the Green Light Uber hub, and it's located at 168 Broadway, Saugus, Massachusetts. We're going to be meeting there from 12 to 3. We have signs. We have banners. If you can't stop by, come by and beep. A lot of us are going to be not driving for 24 hours with solidarity with other rideshare companies across the company, rideshare associations across the group. There's one in Philadelphia, Philadelphia Drivers Union, Rideshare Drivers United in California. There's Chicago Rideshare Advocates in Chicago. So this is a national campaign that's been in the process probably for about two to a month right now, a month or two right now. And we're trying to show solidarity, and we do have solidarity, and we have strength in numbers. And this is a national event.
Right. New York in particular has had some successes both in court and in the legal environment, if you will, in the statutory environment, at getting some gains for their drivers. And I want to stress the value that Lyft and Uber have added to people's lives.
Oh, I agree.
I mean, and understand that a lot of that is based on the willingness of the investors in Uber and Lyft to create a product like this from literally scratch. The software is in itself, I consider, a miracle when it's working. But at the same time, it's the Uber driver who has significantly reduced the number of, let's be blunt, drunks on the road and people who are, quite frankly, OUI or should not be operating a motor vehicle. The driver is the person that takes your daughter home from an event safely, well in excess of 99.9, despite the media's efforts to find and hype to the heavens any terrible, let me acknowledge, terrible event, but statistically minor, occurrence of events. Despite that, the drivers are generally safer. They take untold number of people off the roads, which helps in congestion. It's an economically more efficient market than cabs, and they save people a bloody fortune. Let me tell you, my friend, I have to drive in Rhode Island a lot because of just, I have another job, and, I'm your typical part-time driver. So if I don't have the energy to drive an hour north to Boston, to the promised land, if you will, I sit here in Rhode Island, and the minimum ride in Rhode Island, which takes you pretty much point to point anywhere downtown, my compensation for that is $2.25. Now it's $3.75 in Boston. It's $2.25 here in Rhode Island. So I'm going to make a plea. I do this part-time, but particularly for guys who do it full-time, throw these guys a bone, give them a couple of bucks on the app, in terms of tipping, or slip them a couple of dollars. As a driver, I can tell you that if you give folks a ducat or a couple of dollars cash, sometimes it's just a spiritual thing. The level of appreciation that you give them in terms of money, because that's why they're doing it. So many of these drivers are relatively new to the country. They're doing everything that we ask people who are new to the country to do, which is to take a legal job, pay taxes, participate in the economy, and work hard. So take care of your driver, because even if you slip the unholy $2 to the guy, you're still saving probably 50 or 60% over what a cab drive would have cost you 3 years ago. So why do you think you face opposition from some of the drivers? Some of the drivers seem so outlandishly bitter towards your efforts to make their lives better. What rationale do you think they have?
I'm gonna say point blank, there's a lot of drivers that are unhappy with what we're doing. Now, you're right, there are some groups that you have to show your ID, but there are a lot of groups that are not. You don't have to show your ID. Some people feel that this backlash of groups is coming from Uber and Lyft itself, their employees working. They do have a lot of hubs nationally in where their employees, there's a lot of people just sitting behind computers all day. I want to say to all the drivers out there and everybody out there that says, why are you doing this? If you don't like your job, go get another job. I'm going to be very frank with you. I love driving. I love meeting people. It's like a social experiment. I know sometimes I'm on my butt for 10 hours. I get out and walk around. It's very demanding and stressful, but I like having the people in the vehicle. I like meeting people from different cultures. I feel like this is like a second coming for me. I really, really do like meeting people. And I think that, we're trying to help the part-timers, full-timers. We just want a fair shake. And I don't know why there's such a backlash. I really don't. And when I get people in my car, I say to them, I go, look, you're not just a passenger. You're part of my family. I want to make sure that you get home safe, get to your destination. And not only that, I think you forgot about the independence of some elderly people. Right. There are a lot of elderly people using the apps now, which is fantastic. It's given them the independence to get out of their house, and I think it's a fantastic thing.
Right, and here in Rhode Island, I'd like to add that it's a difficult situation. In Rhode Island, mass transportation is so bad. If I work nights in Rhode Island, on the average night, I will take at least half a dozen home health care or healthcare workers to their jobs who have no other form of transportation because it's so expensive in Massachusetts and Rhode Island to own a vehicle. Mass transportation does not support their efforts to get to these home health care jobs. These folks are not paid well given the difficulty and the physical challenges and just the sheer level of hard work. And quite frankly, their only way to get to work is us. And quite frankly, it horrifies me that they have to spend that much money. They'll literally spend an hour of their wages for that day to get to work. And I'm not happy about that. But at the same time, if it wasn't for us, they wouldn't get to work. They would not be employed. So whether it be folks who are on the challenging end of the workforce, or whether it be your daughter who's a co-ed at a Boston or Providence area school, who doesn't have to leave a party after with a couple of drinks and walk back to her dorm for literally a couple of dollars. All right? I would tell you we have permanently changed the way people interact socially, and we have permanently uplifted their ability to have a social life here in New England. And sometimes that happens in weather that is horrific. And by the way, much has been noted, and I love your reaction to this, in recent weeks and months, as we've gone through this monsoon season here in Boston, where it's windy and rainy and cold, are drivers very often getting any sort of extra compensation for being on the roads in those difficult circumstances?
Not that I know of. No.
So,
Not me. Not me. I mean, sometimes, it depends. Some drivers do. They hit a few more surges and the bonuses, but those are just a carrot that Uber and Lyft just put in front of you just to get you in a certain direction at a certain time.
right,
But not that I know of.
right. So, what's the point? If you were, we've got a few minutes left here. What's the point, the big point that you want to make? Now, it's the 8th, correct? So that is this Wednesday?
It is. It is.
All right.
It is.
And at what time and location are you asking folks to meet?
So we're asking for the drivers to show up in 168 Broadway, Saugus, Mass.
Right.
It's the Uber Green Light Hub. It's in Boston. Mm-hmm. We'll be there from 12 to 3. They can also go to bidg.org and check in with us. Check our phone number out, 781-486-4545. Text message us, and we're going to be there with as many drivers as we can. And if you're a passenger, please don't use Uber that day. That'd be fantastic. But a lot of the drivers are turning the apps off for 24 hours. I know I will. But there's going to be a lot of people who are going to take advantage of the surge. If there is a huge amount of drivers that will not be on, it's going to be a hot day. The board's going to light up like firecrackers.
Right. So we're asking people to effectively. This is voluntary. You don't have to do it, but
you don't have to do it.
Right. But if you would like to continue to have a high level of service at a very fair price, I mean the price right now, it's kind of ridiculous. Again, if you compare it to cab fares of just a few years ago, if you would like to continue to have this service and have people of goodwill, of a high skill level, do this for a living, then we're asking folks just to take a day off and send a signal. Now again, it's the free market. They don't have to. And I don't doubt that there will be people who will take Uber that day or Lyft in spite of everything, just to prove whatever point I'm sure they think they're making. But we're asking people politely and to understand, again, the challenge of the work. Now, and for example, gas prices have risen dramatically in the last 30 to 60 days. Have we seen any increase whatsoever, any sort of surcharge for the newer, higher gas prices?
No.
Nope.
It's killing some of us.
Yeah. 0.0, we say. Folks,
that's right.
if you're in the Rhode Island market, one of the frustrations that people that talk about is how long it takes to get a ride. Well, again, the rates are so low in the Rhode Island market prior to even the gas price increase that quite frankly it makes little or no sense to drive in this market, which then makes it even worse for the few drivers remaining because, and I'm not sure people are aware of this, if I'm in Providence and I get a call to Newport and for some reason I take it, holy cow, I don't get paid to drive to Newport. Not a penny.
No.
If you cancel because there are so few drivers and it took me a long time to get Newport, which just happened to me, I get $5. So essentially, there are situations where people are working for $5 or $6 or $7 an hour in stretches.
That's right.
So, nothing there. You have, by the way, here's another thing that I don't think people realize. When we pick you up, unless you're a ride of more than 45 minutes, and believe me, it's an imperfect setup, we have no idea where we're taking you. We had no idea what the length of the ride is going to be. We have no idea where we're picking you, other than picking you up, we have no idea what condition you're in. And very often, prior to the occasional piece in the press, we're picking up people who are physically challenged. We're certainly picking up people who have substance use issues, if not abuse issues. And we're being asked to pick up people in some pretty challenging neighborhoods, all for a minimum of $2.25. So, yeah, forgive us if we look to the free market. Is there a point you could see, and this maybe is a little unfair, it's a little too personal, where it just doesn't make sense for you to do this anymore? You're clearly someone who enjoys what he's doing. You clearly work very hard at it. But at what point do you have to say, Uncle, this just doesn't make any sense anymore?
I have. I've cut my hours down practically 50%. So I was doing it full time, and now I've sort of cut them down to seek another venture. Or, like I said, I'm a Mass State licensed auctioneer. I do buy and sell antiques and collectibles, and go to a lot of estates. But yeah, I have cut it down since December, January, February, March. I would say probably about February I started to cut it down a little bit because it was getting to a point where it was getting very difficult.
Right, and very often you'll see come up on the app, and you'll see folks, ads all over looking for drivers, particularly in non-urban markets. Would you recommend this job to anyone at this point, given knowing what you know now?
I would not recommend anyone to drive for Uber or Lyft. It's the compensation. In last year I would have, but now I wouldn't, and I wouldn't recommend this to anybody. It's a tough job financially and draining, especially as you know. Some of the drivers, they have a bump in the road. What happens if your vehicle, gets broken down? You get a flat tire.
Yep.
You have to get your car repaired. I'm working with a bunch of drivers. He had to get a new fuel injector in his vehicle, and he just kept on having issues with his vehicle, and he's not working. He had to go to rent a vehicle from Uber's platform. So now he's renting a vehicle from Uber's platform. He has a car payment that he has to pay for, and he has a vehicle that's not working because of the wear and tear in the vehicle. This is the reason why I'm not going to give up, because there's people out there that are suffering.
Right. And these are people who are working very, very hard. They're well-meaning.
Very hard.
And they do a very good job in some very difficult circumstances. And
very difficult.
And again, very often these people, and I'm painting with a broad brush, but a lot of the folks that I met that are other drivers are newly arrived to the country. They're here legally, and they're doing exactly what our culture asks of them to do, which is to work really hard and provide value to the culture, to the community, and in return, all they're asking for and all you're asking for them is a level playing field and a transparent understanding of what you're making and what you're going to make and what your opportunities are, and consistency. That's really all you're asking for, isn't it?
That's right.
Wow.
And
Yikes.
I just want to make sure people know this also. Up until last year, and this is a point that I don't know, not many people know, but up until last year, I was getting a lot of tips from Uber when they initiated the tip program for Uber, and I've noticed since November that November, December, January, a lot of customers are telling me that they've raised the prices.
Right.
And that's why they can't afford the tip, which is pretty strange. So I think there's, again, with the algorithm, the software, the inconsistency of the dynamic pricing to the customers is maybe even putting a little bit of a strain on some of the customers where they don't even want to tip.
Yeah, folks are stretched. Yes, we have some wealthy people who take Lyft. We also have college students. We have home health care workers. Yep. We have people who are taking Lyft that week because their car is dead and they can't afford to get it fixed.
That's right.
We take a lot of different people from a lot of different circumstances from point A to point B. Right now, and I'm going to jinx this by saying this, for the last 3 weeks, and you can appreciate, I only do Lyft. The last 3 weeks, I've had a 5.0 rating, which is the holy grail. I don't expect it to last long. Okay, I'll screw up something, or somebody will just indiscriminately decide that I don't know. They don't like whatever. They don't like second generation portly Irish Americans. Yikes. So I agree. I mean, if I'm getting a 5.0, which is perfect, which means my last 100 rides on the Lyft platform have been perfect. No one's had a reason to object. I get tipped maybe 5% of the time, 7% of the time.
Yeah.
And I think it has a lot to do, with the economy and the cost of driving. And again, folks, if you listen to this show now or in the future, that extra buck or two, yeah, it's a long ride, you help people out, but that extra buck or two isn't going to break you, and has a real effect on drivers and how they just feel about themselves. I can't stress that enough. Somebody slips you a buck, hey, usually they'll go right at the gas, but a couple of bucks and you're taking a break at Dunkies. All right. If you're not, you're saying to yourself, why am I doing this? Because I can't imagine a situation where people take a cab ride and don't tip a cab driver because the transaction's in cash. Can you? I just can't.
Can't understand it. Yeah.
So listen, I just want to congratulate you on your efforts. I want you to know that not all of us are looking at you cross-eyed. I think it's wonderful what you're doing. Welcome to activism and the ups and downs of it. And I hope you stick with it. And I'd like to talk to you in the next week or so about, again, online like this, about how it went and how you think things are going. Have you sensed any change? And let's stay in touch on this, because at this point, particularly in Boston, I don't know if there's a more universal meeting spot. Certainly more than churches, certainly more than schools, and maybe even more than Dunkin' Donuts. I don't know if there's a more universality, if you will, than Lyft and Uber, particularly for people in the city. I've got to believe at some point every week someone's using the platform. So this really impacts everybody. And it would be sad to see it to continue to decline. So again, one more time, we're talking about May 8th. Give folks the rundown. And by the way, if you can't make it to the terminal, that doesn't mean you have to drive. Take a day off.
That's right.
Take a nap. Go spend time with your little kid. Go to a museum. All right. Go point at the cabbies like we do and make fun of them. Whatever.
So Wednesday, May 8th, from 12 to 3, 168 Broadway, Saugus, Massachusetts. We're trying to get as many drivers as we can there. Fight pay cuts. We're fighting for our rights, and together we are stronger. And one thing we all like to say, solidarity.
Solidarity, baby. It's the American.
Solidarity.
What's more American than a group of people getting together to fight for more money? To me, that's capitalism and American as it gets. So listen, thank you so much for joining me. I know you're going to probably get back on the road now, but I hope we get a chance to meet soon. And again, congratulations on your efforts. And if you could reach out to everybody in the Boston Independent Drivers Guild, give them my heartfelt thank you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
All right, we're going to take a quick break right now. Felipe Martinez of the Boston Independent Drivers Guild putting, I think, a rather human face to the plight of the rideshare driver in Boston and Providence today. We're going to try and get this up onto our podcast so you can listen to it. If you didn't have a chance, we have a little bit of problem with sharing on Facebook. But if you're a passenger, take a break from it for a day. Support the drivers. If you're a driver, look to each other for strength and hopefully improve conditions for everyone. And if you happen to listen to this and you work for Lyft or Uber, come on. Really? Gasoline's gone up significantly. It's getting to the point where you're going to, what's the cliche, kill the golden goose. We are the coalition, loud and proud, outrage porn-free, civilly disobedient media broadcasting live on the worldwide coalition network here at the Go Local Live Broadcast Center, deep in the heart of the city we love, Providence, Rhode Island, the naked city. Well, there aren't 9 million people in this naked city, but there are stories to tell. We've just told one of them. Joining us in just a couple of minutes is Amy Gardner. She's a regular on the show. There's some legislation coming up this Thursday, which I believe should be elevated to crisis level. At what point in time does the government stop collecting data on us? At what point in time does the government stop telling us what to do with our bodies? And most importantly, how to raise our children? That's what we're talking about here. We're not talking about whether or not vaccines are right or wrong. You know, that's a case-by-case basis, but ultimately all of that should be left up to the individual. There are those who advocate aggressively for the right to control one's body in terms of abortion rights, and I understand that. Personally, I believe in choice. Others don't, and I respect their position. But if in fact you as a political mandate, as a state government, are going to work aggressively to promote, quote unquote, choice and control over one's body for one select audience, how does that not translate into crushing bills like we're going to see Thursday night? Folks, stay tuned. We'll be right back.